Well, I would take my own name out of that book. Because somebody who I thought was my friend, and to be like, meh.
I'd try and find a really pleasurable way to do it.
Did you just call me stupid? Well, you just narrowed down a tiny little region. What an idiot. I think most of us could say that. What would you say? The ending of it. In light of what you just said, anybody that's had a Death Note autograph this weekend, we better not see them show up on eBay, or do you know what's gonna happen?
You're watching convention coverage.
Con been for all of you.
So good.
So great.
Everyone's
so
been amazing.
Yeah, it just still feels like it's just getting started. Just getting cooking here. It's great, though.
How's it been for all you so far?
Good?
Yeah.
Nice.
That's really the most important thing, right?
If you could erase one name off the Death Note, who would it be?
Erase one name off
And
the
bring
Death
it back
Note.
to life.
I know who it wouldn't be.
Well, and then I obviously know who it would be.
Me, myself.
That is kind of a loaded question. Yeah, I mean,
really loaded.
I mean, it's way too late for spoilers in this room, right? You know, we can't. Okay, all right, perfect. Well, I would take my own damn name out of that book. Because somebody who I thought was my friend decided right at the end to be like, meh, I'm done with this guy. Let's leave him sleeping on a very comfortable looking staircase. So I just zoop, take out that name, and then he wakes up with kind of a sore back and gets on with things.
I agree. Take Light's name off and let's just start all over
Hell
again.
yeah.
I mean, we all wish there was a little more L in our lives, right? So it's kind of pretty obvious.
I feel like true to Misa's form, it would be light.
Oh, correct.
Good question. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
If Elle didn't go to Wammy's house, how do you think that would affect his character and the plot of the show?
Oh my gosh. I crave an L prequel show.
Yes!
Right? Like the origin story of L would be so interesting, and it's just hinted at in the show. So, like, who knows? Like, maybe he would have turned, feral or something. He would be like... He would just be roaming the streets at night like a coyote, like looking for scraps of cake, you know? Who the heck knows?
I brought him some marshmallows.
God bless, yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, I feel so like he's just such a unique character, such a unique creation that I feel like there would be just great stories to tell with how he ended up where he ended up.
Thank you.
Or he would have turned up in a boy band.
Yes!
That would have been fun too.
Thank you.
So, there's been a recent surge of Death Note getting popular again because I believe...
As there should be.
As this year I hear they're going to make another American adaptation of Death Note by the writer of Stranger Things. And, recently there's also been like a Simpsons Death Note parody and such, and also the infamous American adaptation of Death Note. So I guess going into this question is, have any of you seen either the Death Note Simpsons parody or the American adaptation of Death Note? If so, what do you think of either of the two?
I have. I saw The Simpsons. Just not on the night of Halloween, but I watched it the night after Halloween was when I got around to seeing it, and it was great. I loved it. I mean, it's how much you're going to cram into a little 7-minute short, and to see Lisa as Light, and it was pretty interesting. But I just love the fact that it's the Simpsons creators, of all the choices of things to do their Treehouse of Terror parodies about, they chose Death Note as one of their subjects, and it was great. I mean, they did it as well, but I loved the Death Note version. The movie, I was really pumped to hear about some of the casting for it, especially for Ryuk. But Willem Dafoe is a phenomenal performer. I love so much of his work, and I thought he did a great job in it. But I don't personally, I didn't think it worked as well as it could have, but I am excited, like you talked about the Duffer Brothers getting the rights to do a series, and they did some great stuff with Stranger Things. I love that series, so I'd love to see what they do. And put the word out there if they're looking for a voice for Ryuk. I'm I'm open for business.
I feel like Brian kind of summed that up. I did not watch either. But because I don't watch a lot of Simpsons, that's fine, right? That's cool.
That's okay.
And I was advised to not watch the American version of Death Note. So
I had the same experience with the Hollywood reboot or whatever. I've said, I really want to watch this. Don't. Like, oh, but I have to watch it. Don't. So my expectations are now so low that I'm probably finally going to watch it and be like, I loved it.
yeah.
That don't was
or
me.
no.
I was just behind him. Don't watch it light.
I made it through 10 minutes of that thing, and then I turned it off.
Question. I was curious if any of you had the chance to read the novels.
The manga?
No, there's actual books.
Oh, no.
So, sadly, light isn't really in them, or Misa. They're mostly about Elle.
Yes, as they should be. Yeah.
One of them details the case he worked on with Naomi before she died.
Cool.
So I was just curious if any of you had been able to read them. They're amazing.
I haven't, but I might now. I didn't even really know they existed. I think it may have. Is it one of them called Change the World or
Yes.
something? Okay.
And there was a movie of the same name, and the one with Naomi is Los Angeles BB murder cases.
Okay, cool. Yeah, like this is only the second anime convention I've ever been to. So all of this is still, I'm still processing all of you, like, and all of this, and all, thanks, and all this new stuff that some of you are bringing to the table is a revelation, right? So stuff like what you're describing, I can't wait. I'll check it out.
And when you guys say thanks to us for coming, we have to throw that back to SacAnime and the fans for inviting us here, because we were invited by them to be here, and we have to thank them for that. We're here because they invited us, and we're thrilled to be part of this. It's just so exciting to see.
thank you.
You all were in possession of a death note. What is the most creative way you can think of to kill someone?
Oh my gosh.
Wow. I mean, I wouldn't want to, but if somehow I had to do it, I'm sure I'd try and find a really pleasurable way to do it. The most amazing thing ever, like, I don't know, maybe it's skydiving and you didn't know the chute wasn't open until just before it was open, or it was I don't know.
Mine would probably be, mine would probably be having someone die doing something that they loved.
Aww.
That's so nice.
Like if you love singing and you were on stage and you were singing and maybe you just kind of choke and die or something. But, at least you were doing what you loved. Or if you loved to knit or crochet, crocheting like a nice sweater. And then it was like, then you're gone.
In your eyes.
But then your last memory would be of something that you loved.
Yeah. And everyone could say that at the funeral. They died doing what they loved.
Exactly. Very cliche.
I think I would go with overindulgence of chocolate rations.
Oh.
I got a big sweet tooth, so there you go, right?
So like diabetes?
Chocolate milk?
Oh, zing.
Drown in a chocolate milk hot tub.
That sounds glorious. Yeah. As long as it's quality chocolate milk.
Yeah.
Trader Joe's chocolate milk then.
Oh, there you go. Good question. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Brad and Brian, how do you resonate with your Death Note characters?
Go ahead, Brad.
Ooh, all right. Well, I mean, okay. Yeah. At the beginning of the show or at the end of the show? So episode 1, yeah, I mean, I could relate to some degree. I was a student at some point and, wide-eyed and optimistic. And the saying is, absolute power corrupts how? Absolutely. And that's pretty much what happened to our friend Light. So as much as in some ways I can kind of get behind and almost agree with some of the principles and some of the ideas, idealistic as they may be, it is a very, very slippery slope. And he was clearly lubed up and went for the ride. So at some point, my ethics and morals departed a little bit from his. but he got taken in by the power, and too much power for one person without having to answer for it can be problematic, and we see how it worked out for Light. So I think I would have taken a slightly different path.
It's hard to come up with a way as how you would relate to a death god, but as a performer, I love to observe people and what people do in certain scenarios, and that's very much what Ryuk is doing when and I have been known to be a bit of a troublemaker sometimes, where I like to poke the bear a little bit, especially maybe in my younger days, to see what would happen. And that's exactly what Ryuk did when he dropped the notebook, the death note, to Earth. He wanted to see what would happen when he was bored and observe and see the consequences of everyone's actions, and it's kind of fun just to observe people.
And you love apples.
And I also love apples, yes.
Hey, thank you.
My favorite fruit.
If this franchise managed to cross universes with other crime dramas, do you think Elle would struggle trying to catch the elusive Jigsaw Killer?
Wow, what a question. Would he struggle? Yeah, I think that struggle might not be in Elle's vocabulary, like exertion, not really his thing. It's an interesting question because it also I can imagine a league of super detectives, Elle, Sherlock Holmes, Columbo, would that count? I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
Elle in a trench coat, and battling Moriarty, et cetera, et cetera. I think that could be very fun. You're onto something. You should write it.
Thank you.
What do you think would happen if Elle picked up the Death Note instead of Light?
What a great... Wow, what a great
zingers.
question.
There'd be a lot more examples of death by cake. Or death by lack of footwear, things like that.
Honestly, I don't know if Elle would use it. I don't see him being a particularly vindictive person or inclined to be sort of, have a messiah complex, unlike this guy. I feel like he would just leave it or bury it or hide it. Stay away.
Fair enough.
He's too smart for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you just call me stupid?
Well, he's like the best character of all time.
It's a matter of opinion.
Yay.
And my question is for each of you. So, which episode was your favorite to act in, lend your voice to? Whether because you did something really cool, like Brian, a laugh or something, or which was your favorite episode to be part of?
Knowing the episodes after 17 years since we recorded them, someone would have to explain to me what episode I did what when. Episode 12 or 13 or 23. I don't remember the episode numbers. I just remember scenes and scenarios. The ones that always tend to pop out the most for me is when he jumps out of his sort of natural character of being the observer in the scenes where he loses himself a little bit to wanting the apples, because he's so different in those scenes than what he usually is. So those are the ones I remember the most recording, but I wouldn't remember what episode numbers they are. You'd have to fill me in on that yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like a constant. I think I said this to somebody at my table today. We would get these episodes maybe a couple days before to watch, or the scripts. So it was this constant discovery as well for us acting in the show. For me, the great pleasure was as more and more of Elle's quirks were revealed, his eccentricities, discovering that in the moment and getting to play that was just a constant source of amusement. I mean, I would literally start bringing pastries into the studio with me to eat, and Carl, the director, would laugh at me because I'd have a muffin or a croissant or something from patisserie down the way. And, I probably gained 5 pounds, just recording this show. So that was a great pleasure overall. But in terms of individual scenes or moments, the things that stand out for me are, there's this funny little sequence where the three of us are sort of hanging out, and all of a sudden it becomes like a sitcom or some like sort of like Three's Company. Like we're just, in another show they would have just been besties and hung out and played board games and eaten a lot of cake. I love that whole thing because it shows sort of a lighter side. And then in contrast to that, the end of of Elle's journey, just before the very dramatic scene, almost biblical scene in the rain where we, get intimate with certain parts of his body.
For myself, I would say anytime that Misa could kind of lose it and get really jealous and cray-cray, those were my favorite parts. I also was reminded today that I did do a song on the show, and it's like, careful what you do. Oh, yeah. And I was just brought back to that moment, and anytime music is involved in a show and I get to use my voice in a different way, that was really special. And basically just like playing a pop star, I mean, I enjoyed every aspect, but I'm like Brian, it was a long time ago, so I can't remember exact scenes.
You're just a baby.
I was just a baby. Yeah.
I remember, when you're talking about the last episode, it makes it easy to remember which episode it was. But prior to that, there was a fun scene with Elle and Light that involved tennis.
Oh, yeah.
So that was, I won. No big deal. So that was a fun one because...
I let you win.
Right? Yeah. But for sure, one of the most poignant episodes of the entire series was the last one. And I try generally not to watch too much of the source material, like the original Japanese of a show that I'm working on. I'll try and, if it's made available to us, I'll watch a little bit, try and get the gist and the pace of the show, whatever, but I don't want to do a performance that's just mimicking the Japanese actor because Japanese is like the coolest language, soul dane, so I can't compete with that. But that last episode, the show was already becoming very popular over here, which was not a surprise. And I knew that people were going to scrutinize my performance, particularly in the last episode for the end of time. So I watched the original Japanese episode 4 times, which I'd never done before. And I got in my own head about it. And then I went in to record, and we got to the laugh. And I recorded the laugh, and they said, "That's great, Brad, let's move on." And I was like, let me just try it again. Okay, fine, whatever. And I recorded it probably 4 or 5 times. And the problem when you do that, and they were happy with the first take, is what you end up with is them having the opportunity to pick whichever one they want. And the one that they picked has an accidental horse whinny in the middle of it, which was not intended. That was just in the spirit of things, right? That's probably 3 or 4 records in, and that's the one they went with. So, but that was a fun episode to record, but it was also very sad because I knew the show was ending. So I was very difficult in that recording session because I made them let me re-record everything multiple times. That was difficult. And they're like, "Oh, I have a rewrite here too." "Oh, great. Thanks, Brad." Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks for sharing, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Which character is your favorite that's not your own?
Elle. He's
Rem.
super cool.
I like Jealous. There's just something about Jealous that kind of got me, right? Not a huge part, but no.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Rem too.
My protector.
Yeah, always so cool. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
No one here is saying Ryuk.
You like Misa.
Yeah, no, that's good. I just wanted to know. Thanks.
Thank you.
I couldn't pick any of them because then you're like, it's like picking your favorite child. You got to be careful. No.
I could say a million things about Death Note, so I'll keep it brief. I'll just start with Kira did nothing wrong. But
Agreed. Correct.
Intense.
It was my first anime I watched knowing it was an anime. I'd watched Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Didn't really know. But
No.
I was just curious, Death Note is very, very popular in America. It's actually not as popular in Japan as it is here. I was in Japan recently for study abroad, and you can find tons of other merchandise from the time, from other series that are running in Shonen Jump, but almost nothing for Death Note. So I was curious if you guys, I could pick your brains on why do you think it's really popular here in America specifically? Not even just compared to Japan, but just why it took off so much, when it's such a very Japan-based story.
And now, too, considering we recorded in 2008 or something like that, I think Death Note was fairly popular in Japan at the time. But the idea that, Death Note was popular when it was released here in North America immediately, and now it's popular again. And I think, I think you're right. I think it's not having a resurgence in Japan like it is here, which is, I don't know, I can't explain why that would be. It's a cool show. Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, also, they have a lot of material to choose from. So, maybe Death Note comes out like, okay, cool, next. And for whatever reason, we're fixated on certain shows that we love. And then, you talk about them enough, and then somebody's like, oh, I should check that out. And next thing you know, there's a lot more interest in it again.
I don't know either. Do you have a theory, having just been there?
I think there's a lot of people that we see with everything's wrong in the world, it's very easy to clutch on it like, yeah, let's just kill them all. But, when I was in high school and I first watched it, I was very like, yeah, go for it, like, kill all the bad guys. And now it's mostly an in-joke amongst my friends because we all kind of started watching it around the same time. Because I was like, God, it was like what you said. I was like, guys, I found this show called Death Note. We all have to watch it. You have to see it. And my friend at the time, he looked exactly like L. And we came to a convention once, and he didn't even change what he was wearing. But I don't take up too much time. We got a lot of questions here. But thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. One day we'll find out.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah.
So in the beginning parts of Death Note, Ryuk's character has specifically mentioned that with using the Death Note, it is easy to kill people, but the hardest thing for any person who was a previous user of the Death Note is hiding it. So my question to all of you guys is, out of character, how would you hide the Death Note from people?
Okay, so I would have, I'm spitballing here, a drawer, and you take the inside of a pen and make an elaborate thing that only shows up once in the whole show. Yeah,
that's a cool idea.
It is kind of interesting. There's so many different ways that, Light in particular, but other characters as well, try to manipulate situations and hand off, bits of paper, which they're pretending are from the Death Note, and then they secretly have little hidden bits, in a watch or something like that, and, handing over bits of pages to people when now they suddenly see, Shinigami all over the place and whatever. So, I mean, it's an interesting idea. What I've learned from the series is you have to be very careful about how you treat that book. And even in the series, at some point they're adding extra rules in there, which aren't real rules and stuff, to try and trick people and whatever. So yeah, the book itself is really kind of, and I know there's several books in the show, but it's almost its own character, just because it has to really be treated with kids' gloves, and it has so much power. So that's a really tough question. What would I do with? I think I would just leave it alone to begin with. Let somebody else pick it up, like, oh, what's this? No, thank you.
I just hide anything. I'm usually trying to hide in my sock drawer. Doesn't everybody do that?
Sock drawer.
It's just a sock drawer. No one wants to look in a sock drawer. No.
To be fair, I just don't want you guys to know where I've hidden it. So I'm not going to tell you that. No.
He has it.
I think I would sew it into I think I would rip out a page each day and then sew it into one of my garments that I was wearing.
That's smart.
Wow.
Stylish. And
I
practical.
know, exactly.
I would stash it at a public library somewhere in some dusty corner for someone to find one day.
Philosophy
maybe.
section. Probably.
Yeah.
Nobody's...
Or cooking. Who knows?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Who is totally on the side of Kira being able to kill anybody whenever he wants at any time versus not being on that side?
I am not on that side.
I'm not on that side.
Sorry, that was distracted. I am decidedly not on that side.
Well, I almost have to be on that side, then, don't I? But I've also watched the series, so I'm not necessarily fully on that side. Because no one person can be trusted with that type of power, right? Because, who do they answer to? Nobody? Well, that's a bit of a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If Light were more careful at the very beginning of the show, such as not writing all the names in right after school so that Elle could discover, hey, all of these deaths are happening at around 3 p.m. Japan time. Maybe he's located in Japan, and maybe he's a high school student. How do you think the story would change? Would Elle have been able to catch Light if he were more careful in regards to writing in the death note and planning out the deaths for criminals?
Some of the stuff you're saying here is absolutely correct. And it's reminding me, like, one of the biggest blunders that Light made early on is there was like a news broadcast, and he's like, I'm going to take advantage of whatever. And then it turns out that it was only live airing in one region. And you're like, oh. So he's just assuming at the very least it's nationwide. And then it's like, oh, well, you just narrowed down to a tiny little region. What an idiot. So, I mean, to answer your question, if he was much, much more careful and much, much more patient at the beginning, I think he could have done a much better job at, eluding some of the capture and whatnot. But it also would have made for a much longer and less interesting to watch series, I imagine. So, I mean, we all watch movies or read books or TV shows or something. Like, why would they do that? Like, well, if they didn't do that, you don't have much of a story, and then it's kind of boring. So it kind of played out, unfortunately, how it, I suppose, had to.
Mistakes made.
No.
Yeah, we've been, exactly what Brad said. Like, it's the human failings, it's the pride, it's the hubris, or their weaknesses that make characters more interesting when they reveal them. And, it would have been hella boring if Light just nailed it every time. Mm-hmm. And Elle was, all you saw of Elle was him eating cake. That would be, the novelty would wear off after a while.
So you think Elle would be like, oh, it's just a string of coincidences. Back to my cake?
Basically, yeah. On to the next case.
Yeah.
The Jigsaw Killer or whatever.
Thanks.
Thank you.
If you could change one thing about your character, what would you change?
The end. I think most of us could say that. What would you say? The ending of it. Yeah.
Would still be alive.
That my parents would still be alive?
Oh.
Footwear.
I wish Light was a little nicer to Misa.
Yeah.
He turns into a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
Right? Particularly in how he treats Misa. It's just not nice. No.
I told Light I would write his name in the notebook when the time came, so it happened exactly the way it should. Wouldn't change a thing, except maybe more apples, of course.
Are you picky with your apples?
Am I picky?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little bit picky. It is. Some people know it is my favorite fruit. I'm not just saying that because I play Ryuk. It is my favorite fruit. I'm pretty much the only one in my family that buys bags of apples, and I'm the one that eats them all the time. They have to be very crisp, very juicy, and I prefer a sweet apple. I'm not the Granny Smith, like, the sour.
What about a pink lady?
Yeah, I like those. They're pretty
tart.
Sweet. Yeah, a little bit tart.
Yeah.
But crunchy and juicy is what's important. Juicy.
So where do you stand on Red Delicious?
Oh, the worst.
The worst.
No,
No,
Red
it's
Delicious.
gotta
It's
be
okay.
a Gala or a Fuji. Right
Okay.
now, Envy apples are very delicious.
Some Red Delicious
Honey
are-
crisp.
Oh, Honey
is
Crisp,
good.
Honey Crisp.
And to expand on that,
Organic always.
apple pie,
I love apple pie.
Oh.
apple crisp,
I love apple crisp.
apple crumble.
Turnovers, pie,
Turnover.
all of it.
All right.
Even applesauce.
Applesauce?
You're
Come
like,
on.
guys, that wasn't the question.
Apple
but-
Jacks?
Thank you.
Thank you.
What was your favorite part about working on Death Note?
Those are always the hardest things when you worked on something as long ago as we did when we were actually making it. And we never got to work with any of these
No.
great performers. Not one time. I was never in the studio with any of them once, ever. We saw our great director, Carl Willems, on the other side of the glass with an engineer and just ourselves doing our lines only. I heard some of the performances because sometimes they would have recorded before me, but never saw them at all. This is the first time You guys are seeing all of us together in one room ever, I think.
Probably.
This, isn't it? I don't think we've...
That's possible.
We've never been... You guys are the first. We've never all sat beside each other like this, so...
We've never been in the same room together, all four of us.
I think you're right. Not even on another show, I don't think.
In life, have we?
No way.
I don't think so.
You live in Langley or something.
I'm not in Langley now, yeah, so...
This is a first, so it's hard to pick favorite things, really.
It's right now.
Yeah.
Actually. Wow.
Right.
And I'm not just saying that, actually. It's the experience of rekindling and remembering, reminiscing about something you did a while ago.
An old lover.
That continues to ripple, like that still is like people are digging. That might be the best prize anyway of it all.
That's completely valid. You know, like you're just alluding to, we work kind of in a bubble when we record these. It's one actor at a time. The first time I met Shannon, we did an interview together for like one of the DVDs right towards the end of recording the series. So we had recorded a bunch of stuff, whatever, and then I'm like, nice to meet you, and now we're on camera doing an interview as like a bonus feature or whatever. I'm like, we'd never officially met until then.
We never even heard each other's performances, really. I don't think.
Sometimes some stuff was recorded before. We might hear a bit, but
yeah, you'd
not
hear like the
often.
line
Like a
leading up to
playback.
it.
But more often than not, I think for the episodes, I was one of the first in. So I never really got to hear any of the opposing dialogue from the existing stuff. I would get to hear some of the stuff from the previous session, so I knew kind of where your voices sat for this and everything. But sorry, I'm getting distracted. To your point, though, it's interesting that one of the best things about working on the show is almost 15 years later, here we are. We record kind of in a vacuum almost, and then it's the response that we get from you guys when the show comes out that kind of validates, you know, our work on it and our hopes that, you know, everything kind of comes together well. And, you know, when we're, you know, 15 years later and you guys are still saying you really love the show, that's awesome. You know, when else does that happen in life? It's a pretty special thing, and here we are.
And I'm actively curious as to the reasons why. Like, I watched it again, and it's cool. I get it. But I'm really curious to hear from you guys over, you know, the next couple of days and then beyond. What it speaks to the other person's question. What is it about that it's resonating right now in America particularly? I'm fascinated by that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, guys.
So my question is actually just based on like if you've seen both of the openings for Death Note.
Opening.
So I was just curious.
Yeah, we're talking music, right?
So what do you think? Which of the two do you prefer, personally?
I'll take this one. I mean, I really liked the first opening. Great song, great bit, whatever. And then it switched gears, and Maximum the Hormone are amazing. So I loved it. And it's funny, I went into, you know, that recording session, and, you know, Carl, the director, knew that I was a music guy, so he's like, you got to check out the new opening. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he plays it for me, I'm like, ooh, yeah. And I was a drummer too, right? So I'm hearing that, I'm like, ooh, yeah. So I've actually, it's funny, because the first opening, I learned how to play on guitar.
Yeah, we want Brad to sing this for us at a con. He's done it before.
I did. I learned how to play it on guitar, and I sang it in Japanese at some point, but that was a long time ago. So I don't remember.
Do it again, Brad.
I'll figure it out. But I also figured out how to play the second opening on drums, and it's a fun one to play. So at some point, it'd be awesome if one of these shows had a drum kit set up, and I would show you. I would wail. That thing's awesome.
Yeah, I love the second one too. It's just like it's so chaotic. It's like amazing.
It's in my head now. Thanks for that.
I don't know if you guys know this. There's actually a short sequel manga to Death Note. I believe it was called Akira. And spoilers, everyone, for the manga if you haven't seen it. But the short version is, many years after Light, the Death Note shows up again. Another person in Japan finds it. Decides to call himself Akira instead of Kira to kind of honor it. But instead of using it, he tries to sell it. He sells it to the United States for an exorbitant amount. Basically, I can't remember the actual amount, but it gets split by like most of Japan. And as a result, the King of Death actually makes a rule change, a legitimate rule change, that you cannot physically sell the Death Note. If you do, both the buyer and the seller get killed. So my question to you is, knowing that, in a day and age where the Death Note would be known, like if heart attacks started happening, people would kind of catch on. How would you guys try to monetize the use of the Death Note?
Well, in light of what you just said, anybody that's had a Death Note autograph this weekend, we better not see them show up on eBay, or you know what's going to happen. We were just told it's not going to go out. Monetizing the Death Note.
I don't know.
And this can be either you guys or your characters. Like maybe would L? You said L before. L would not be vindictive, but would he? No. Okay.
I don't think Misa would either.
Okay.
You wouldn't take out a few of her pop rivals?
I mean,
Ryuk doesn't use money, so he doesn't need money.
But you would probably find the right person with the right, maybe an apple farm.
Maybe, yeah, okay, yeah.
See if they could trade it to someone with an apple farm.
Just let Ryuk live in the shed and do whatever you want with the book.
That is like a very black market bidding wars on little scraps from the Death Note.
Yeah, because they only said the physical book,
man.
and I think the rule doesn't say anything about scraps.
Yeah, you could like basically shred it into tiny little bits and then, remulch it and stretch it out and make it last for as long as you can. Okay,
Brad has been thinking about this way too much.
I am now.
Maybe if you stretched it out, maybe it would lessen the impact. So instead of dying, you just get like really bad gas.
gas.
Or
which could feel like
my
that.
gout.
Oh, that's a good one. Good question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My question is, what is your favorite moment in Death Note?
Now I want to say when this guy gets killed. But that's just mean. That's not true anyway.
When light dies, my favorite moment.
I'm racking for my brain for moments that we haven't already mentioned.
I know.
Gosh. Like the first time that we meet in college, I love that whole scene when the first time our characters actually meet in person, and that whole where it all begins, the cat and mouse. I do love that moment.
When Elle's wearing that goofy mask too.
Yeah.
Like that whole bit. Like there's one point where they're walking kind of through like the quad or whatever, and he's got the goofy mask on, and it cracks me up. Like I can't help it. Like it's just priceless, and right away. And that was like pretty early on. So you're like, this is going to be an interesting show.
Yeah.
Like I want to see where his character goes too, because it's just like visually it's hilarious. That reminds me of a couple moments that I like too, is when Light kind of thought that he had gotten was about to pull one over on somebody he was about to kill, and he snapped out of the good guy character for a moment and basically was like, yeah, I'm Kira. What are you going to do? Or then they wander off to their death or something like that. Like, those are fun little bits because you get to see just the maniac under the surface, right?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, guys.